Welcome back to the Unpacked and Empowered Finances. This is the podcast dedicated to simplifying your journey to financial success. I'm your host, Marian Agudo, and I want to ask you a quick favor before we dive in. If you find this information valuable, please hit that like, subscribe, and share button because your support helps us empower more people on their financial journey. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest financial milestones for anyone arriving in a new country, navigating the home buying process here in Canada. I know it can feel overwhelming with different rules, different markets, and whole new system, and that's why I've brought in a true expert to unpack it all for you. So we're sitting down today with Helena McDermott, and she's the powerhouse team lead of the award-winning Evolve Real Estate team to tackle the Canadian real estate market head-on. As a proven industry leader, Helena breaks down the complex steps of buying your first home, from understanding mortgages and down payments to finding the right neighborhood. And that's specifically for our valued newcomer community. The questions we'll be covering today aren't just what I think new buyers need to know. It's actually, I reached out to the newcomer community and asked, what are your biggest questions for a top realtor? So, Helena will be walking us through the essential knowledge every first time home buyer needs, answering direct questions to confidently step into the Canadian real estate market. Now, if there are any questions that we're not able to address at this point, feel free at any time to comment or message me directly or Helena, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as well. Now, if you're ready to transition from a tenant to a homeowner, you're in the right spot.
Helena, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that's great. So, I know you've been doing real estate for a while. Tell us a little bit more about how you got started and what made you stay.
Yes, wow. And I started 9 years ago. Time
Okay.
certainly flies. I was actually, oddly enough, I was working the other side of the country in the oil sands in
Mhm.
Alberta, and I was looking to be home full time and connected that way. And I was looking at business opportunities with a friend of mine that was an agent. And the more I got looking at them, I got thinking, he said, you should just get into real estate.
Mhm.
I already had an interest with some income properties that I had purchased throughout my time working away. And so I just naturally kind of fell into it. It's like, oh, I'll give it a try. I didn't feel that I was a very salesy person, but
Okay.
he recognized in me that I really do like to help people and give advice and want what's best for them. And he said, that's what it's all about. So, and yeah, so here we are still today. And now I'm fortunate enough to have a team working with me. So the past 5 years, I've been able to also work with other agents and have a great support team to help me do the best
Mhm.
for our clients.
That's really great. So,
Yeah.
obviously, you are enjoying what you do because
Yes,
you've been
love
here
it.
for 9 years already.
Yeah.
And I know that you have close connections. You work closely with the Multicultural Association in Sussex. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you speak with newcomers as well, like how you communicate usually with them.
So and I understand it's so different to buy a house in every country.
Mhm.
And we love to help people, especially first time home buyers. And when you're buying your first home in Canada, especially. So with the Multicultural Association, we were able to go and be a contact point when they had somebody that was coming into the area and had questions about where to get started. We also yearly, I think it's been 4 or 5 years now, we put on sessions at the Multicultural Association in Sussex in the fall to help educate first time home buyers and really target it to that audience.
Okay, that's really good. Now, do we have to be permanent residents to buy a home here? Like our status, is it okay that we're on temporary status, or do we have to be permanent residents to buy a home?
You actually don't. It's a common
Yeah.
misconception. A lot of people think that. I thought that too at
Mhm.
first until really I got more digging into it. It might be a little easier in some ways if you do have your permanent residency, because right now, for example, there is a foreign buying ban that affects some areas. But even with that, there's loopholes to that. If you have 183 days,
Mhm.
let's say, left on on a work permit or whatnot. And maybe your PR just isn't in yet. But those are all things that, like, you know, the rules are always changing. It's you would want to consult a lawyer on it, but you can certainly buy. And there's different programs out there. So it's actually with as little as 5% down that you could
Yeah.
buy and not have your PR yet. And there's also um, if you don't quite meet those requirements, there's also like newcomer mortgage programs too that do exist, but sometimes they need a larger down payment. So it could be like 20% or more. So I would recommend to get with a mortgage specialist and talk
Okay.
about your situation, but you absolutely can, and even with as little as 5% down.
Right. So someone who is temporary and can put more than a 20%, they would still be able to purchase a home.
Yes, and
Is that
even
what
still with like, even if they're temporary, still even with 5%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just depends on like, and what the
The
program, like what the program is. Yeah.
they would qualify for.
Because there's things too of like establishing a year of Canadian credit history and things like that. That might be put it onto a bit of a different program, but they would be the best to deep dive into that. Like I just kind of could touch on it a little bit from my knowledge on it, but they can really explain it best. So you certainly there's programs out there to assist and get people going so they can have that dream of, you know, putting down roots of having their own home here.
Okay. And so there are some mistakes that even not newcomers, even people who were born here, but more so, what are the biggest and most expensive mistakes that you see first-time home buyers make?
So one I would say is that people aren't prepared, that let's say they have the 5% down, but they don't have the extra funds saved up. So then they're coming in. I mean, you're in the financial planning world, of course, so you're helping people plan for the future and for these times. And even like for the down payment, of course, like the first time home buyer savings account, like that's huge to help people get there and make those plans in advance. The problem is when people aren't prepared, they could be strapped when they get into the house, and if something happens, they're not prepared for tomorrow. If that, roof needs to get fixed, I mean, these are all things that should be caught on an inspection that but you always need to have a buffer for that. Having another 2 to 4% on top of that, say 5% or whatever your down payment is very important for your closing costs. So because there's other things, that's what people forget, I think, is that there's a 1% land transfer tax. So your purchase price is, $300,000. You have another $3,000 you need to have on closing day, the lawyers, plus to pay the lawyers, which could be, another 1,000 plus tax or so. You've got your home inspector to pay. That could be $600 to $800. Your adjustment of the property taxes. So it really can add up quickly, and it's, can almost feel like hidden costs, but people get so set on that what they need down that they forget about those other amounts.
That's true. And even just like studying about what would be your bills when you're actually living in the house. Yes. It'd be more different when you were renting, and then now you own the home. You have to pay all the bills, the internet, all the utilities, and like you said, like if there's something that needs to be fixed, like the roof, something that people have to prepare for as well. So maybe not just research on the down payment and the closing costs, but more on like what could be there to maintain the home once I'm in there. So we touched on the amount of money that most people need to prepare for. Now, for new Canadians, how can they properly check if a neighborhood is safe, friendly, and close to essential amenities?
You can do a lot online, but I really like to walk the neighborhood, like look around. I always say you're buying what's around you too, right?
Yes.
So look at your immediate neighborhood, look at the houses right around you. Are they in good repair? Like you want to make a good investment. Is it safe? And I would even challenge to like go for a drive or walk it at different times, like not just through the day on a Monday, like what's going on there on the weekend or an evening. How do you feel? Like, do you feel safe in the area? Because I mean, we can advise, let's say as a realtor and whatnot in the area, but you could have a really bad neighbor, something like that. So it is very specific on that. And look at like those, what's going on with the transit. How accessible is it? How close is it to schools? Check on the schools itself, like what ratings are there. So you can do a lot of online research. And there's also like online community groups too. So check those community groups, see what the feel is, see what people are saying, and is because you can make so many changes to the house, but you can't change where it's located. Not
Yes.
easily, anyways.
Yeah, a common thing that people would look at is the accessibility, I would
Mhm.
say, and the affordability. And sometimes
Exactly.
we forget, oh, we didn't check those things that you said, like visiting the neighborhood for different times in a week is really helpful. So that's good. Now, these are questions that I actually ask my friends and the people that
Yeah.
I know that they would ask someone like you. Now, when they finally find a house, like which major systems are the most important to check for future maintenance cost?
No, that's a really great question. And having that home inspection is worth every penny because you get an actual detailed report that breaks down all of those major systems and what the condition is of it. So, electrical, here in St. John, for example, there's a lot of beautiful but older homes. Like it could be very old wiring. You could have issues with insurance. It could be you want to make sure things are safe, right?
Yeah.
And if it needs updating, what's the cost going to be of that, right? So identifying those so can plan for tomorrow. So electrical, your roof, most importantly, your foundation, your structure that's
Mm.
holding up the whole house. Those are the sort of things that your heating, your plumbing. Those are all major systems that you're going to want to check when you go to purchase a house.
So, can you walk us through the home inspection process? Are you able to have the house inspected even though you didn't, like, you haven't made an agreement yet? And so, like, what's the main goal? What's important to know about the home so that you know you're doing a good buy?
No, absolutely. That's a great question. So typically, the home inspection would be after you already have an accepted offer
Okay.
because I mean, it is an investment. You're spending like $600 to $800 on it. So most people they want to have the security of like, I'm getting this house before they put the home inspection in. And I mean, the home inspection is a condition, right? So if you're not satisfied with that home inspection, you're not going to move forward the
Okay,
offer.
so you can still back out.
You can still back out.
Okay.
You could absolutely, but it is good to have the accepted offer now, and we'll dive into this a little bit later, but it is a competitive market. So if there's things you can do to inspect the home prior that maybe you could feel more confident ahead of time, that's helpful too. So,
Okay.
there's different strategies that you can put in place there, but a full home inspection, which I would recommend that you would do after having an accepted offer, is typically about 3 hours. So the
Okay.
home inspector goes there themselves and they go through the home in detail. They take pictures as they go, they make notes, and it's not about a pass or fail. It's about, is this home safe? Is it to code? I mean, homes are, of course, they're built at different years. So, I mean, the code does change, but they go through of like what's safe, what's their recommendation. So, it's not a pass or fail. It's, how do you feel comfortable about moving forward with this purchase? And what's the major work that needs to get done? There's always going to be something. I just had a new construction last week and they still had things on the report. So I wouldn't be scared or intimidated at the fact that there is things on the inspection. It's just what's the level of comfort and then looking again at that budget that we're talking about is what can you take on?
Okay.
So yes, they go through themselves, they build that report, and then typically you would meet the inspector there for a meeting at the end of the inspection. So then they can walk you through because just getting the report itself is a little scary. You get this like
Yeah.
you see all this red and it's like
Mm.
30 pages. You're like, oh my goodness, this place must be terrible. But when they walk you through it and they explain it, they can kind of be like, you know what? This is typical of these kind of homes. This is a recommendation I would do to fix it. And a lot of times the fixes in the recommendations are really not that expensive for little things like but then they could say, hey, I would recommend you get an electrician to come in and check
Yeah.
this wiring because there's a different type of material here like aluminum or whatnot that's more risky, and then you would have a better idea price point. So sometimes they are directing you to other professionals
Okay.
to take a closer look, like a plumber or electrician. But it's a really good starting point that you can have confidence in what you're buying.
Okay. So it could be different now, but when we bought our home and after the inspection, we learned what needs to be fixed, what we need to look at. And we ended up negotiating.
Absolutely.
Again, it's could be different now because there's lots of people who's wanting to be like, if you don't want it, we're gonna get it.
Yeah, too bad. We'll go to the next person. But no, you're absolutely right. It
Yeah.
is. It is a point
Okay.
for negotiation. Or, or you could simply be like, I don't want to go ahead with it. Or you could say, you know what, that panel needs to be replaced, an electrical panel, and that's typically 3,500. So I want to try to negotiate that off. And, your realtor is going to be your negotiator and really help you be like, okay, what would make you comfortable to go ahead with this? Or sometimes they're doing the work. A lot of times it's a price point that just gets negotiated to reduce it.
Like the owner, the seller?
Yeah, so you'd be like, okay, I want to take, $5,000 off of our offer,
Okay.
because of these things. But they also sometimes they might get the work done. So you could just say, in an amendment to say, prior to closing, a license licensed electrician, for example, is going to go in and replace the panel at the seller's expense prior to closing with receipts provided, right? So you'd be like, okay, I have proof that somebody came in as professional and did this work. So there's different things that could happen, but sometimes in a hot market, there might not be as much flexibility on that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's really good to know. Now, there is bidding war going on. Is that still happening?
It is still happening, and like I said, you've got to do what you're comfortable with. Just because there might be a bidding war, maybe it'll take longer to get a place with doing inspections and whatnot. But it's still you've got to feel comfortable with your purchase.
Yeah.
More homes will come up. It'll be the right timing. If a house is priced well and in a good area, and typically within like the average affordability, like if it's in the 300,000 range, it's typically a competitive
Yeah.
situation in our market. So you have to really, be thoughtful of your offer. There's strategies on price, for example. You can do things like an escalation clause, for example, to say, okay, I'll,
Escalate.
yeah. So what it does is like, let's just say the house is 300,000
Okay.
and there's going to be multiple offers on it. You might be like, well, I would pay 320 for it, but if another offer came in that was better than mine, I would beat that offer by $2,000 up to a maximum of $360,000. So you're already establishing what
Like
you would
what?
pay,
How maximum?
what the max
What's your
is, right?
maximum?
So it's not to say, and we ask for proof of that other offer with the personal information reviewed. So it does give a bit of a strategy to be like, okay, I would do this, but I don't want to, but if I have to, I will. So you're not always going up to your max of it. Sometimes the seller will be like, okay, you just played your cards. This is what you'll pay. I'll get you to go right to it. But typically not. Like it's predetermining what you would do in that situation. So that's one thing. Conditions do make a big difference too. It's not just about price. It could be about your flexibility about closing. Like what terms are there, right? Maybe that person needs time to find another place to live.
Okay.
And maybe you're able to give that to them. That could mean way more than, $5,000 more than somebody else too. So just showing your flexibility and having those conditions. Like, unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of them come through that don't have that inspection clause. But yeah, they'll just forego it and be like, okay, so totally different than when you looked at it. I don't really like that. I feel that, I recommend to my clients to make sure that they have an inspection. But sometimes you might do like have somebody come in before you get that offer if it's a competitive situation to do an inspect. They won't be like a 3-hour inspection, but maybe you could have somebody that you feel comfortable with, like a contractor or whatnot, to come through with you and take a good look at the property. So I feel that you still need to do an inspection of some sorts. It just, it might be harder in a competitive situation, but you have to do what you're comfortable with.
That makes sense. So going back to the bidding war, I would think, is it right to recommend that you get the approval, so like the amount that you're gonna be approved for, making sure that that's still affordable for you, and at the same time, like when you're looking for houses, it should be below that just because of the bidding that's going on.
And you'd want to attach that pre-approval letter. So that's something that we get from our clients to have strength with the offer, is to attach the pre-approval, be like, we already have this done. It's just we have something in writing to say that they can do X amount, that they're within their budget. And so it has a lot more strength with the offer when it's being presented. And And also sometimes people are even writing letters, like personal letters to the sellers
Oh,
as well.
yeah, I
I
think
know.
I've
I
seen
call
that
them
on Facebook.
the love letters, I call it anyways, but they'll do it. And because there's depending on the motivation of
Mm,
the seller. Some are like, this is my family home. I really want to know that it's going to a young
mm,
family or something. I know it sounds funny, but they really do care about that.
okay.
So sometimes people are writing letters, and I've seen that make a difference, that they are at a table being presented and they're like, I really want this young family starting out to have a chance. I'm going to give it to them, even though it's less money.
Mm,
So it's not,
yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying that your love letter is necessarily going to seal a deal, but it does certainly, it helps. And I mean, you got to do everything you can, and and working with a realtor that understands that, and in the market, and certainly guide the buyer the right way on that.
And so, in your experience, some sellers do have that motivation.
Some do,
Yeah,
and then some are like, I
I
don't
don't
care,
care.
show me the money.
Okay.
It just really depends on the person. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what are the key indicators that tells me, for example, that this house would be a good long-term investment, or it's just nice?
I say, like, having that solid inspection, great area,
Mm-hmm.
location. And unfortunately, if a lot of people want it,
Yeah.
it's probably a good indication as well that it's a desirable property. But yes, having a good structure, good location,
Mm-hmm.
and buying still, with a plan, right? You want to, even though, I know there's bidding wars and whatnot, you still need to stay in a certain range, especially if you're like, you know what, my plans might change. My husband might get transferred in a couple
Mm-hmm.
of years. You don't want to overpay if you're not there for a longer term. Like, you want to plan to be somewheres for 5 to 7 years would
Yeah.
be the ideal in this market turnaround, that you would have the less risk.
Mm-hmm.
But location, absolutely. Location and condition. You can do cosmetic things and improve the property, but having that good structure to work with, good bones, as they would say.
Yeah, that's true. Now, once a client gets the keys, what is the most important type of financial protection you would encourage them to secure immediately after buying a home? Because I know that, like, if you're putting in 5% down payment, you're required to do the mortgage. And so, what other things would you recommend?
I mean, if you have to look at your financial situation, I think this is where you could really help them too, on having those savings for things that could go wrong. Because even you already evaluated all the risks by having the home inspections. You know the roof needs done in 5 years. Let's say maybe you're budgeting for that. Maybe you're helping set up a savings program so that they have that, maybe it's a tax-free savings or something like that, that they're
Mhm.
putting money aside for if something happens. And even maybe, like, depends on if they have these things set up at work or not, but like life insurance or like disability
Mhm.
or whatnot, just in case something, critical illness. Do you have those sort of insurance policies in place that if something does happen, that you're okay? Because you can get, and the banks, of course, they're going to push it as part of something that they
Mhm.
sell, but they'll sell you, when you do the mortgage, to say, hey, here you go, you can have this policy here at this time to protect you. But there's a lot of advantages to talking to somebody such as yourself
Mhm.
about what you can get that way to be more protected after it goes down. If the house is paid off, you paid that policy the whole time, and you no longer have that coverage. Whereas if you get another sort of policy, there's more you can do there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone needs help with that, I'm happy to assist as well
Yeah.
when it comes to securing an investment. So you want to make sure that you're protected with the risk that comes with it if you're not able to pay your mortgage. So all those kinds of stuff, I'm definitely happy to assist with that. Now, what is the single most important piece of advice that you would give to an educated newcomer starting their home buying process for today?
I would say don't do it alone. Have the right people in your corner, and also be patient, right? So work with the professionals, take the time. It's a marathon, not a race,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, you really want to take your time, learn the areas,
Mhm.
and be patient of when the right house comes up, because I know renting, it can kind of feel, frustrating, especially when you have that go ahead from the bank. You want to just go, right? But you want to make sure you're making a good investment. So patience is key, but having somebody that's working with a strategy to get you there is very important as well.
Okay. And I know you've been working as a realtor for 9 years, and I know you work with a team as well with Keller Williams. Um, are you doing the hiring of your team, or do you just work with, like, they just assign you a person?
No, so actually how it works is, so Keller Williams is the brokerage, so it's kind of like a umbrella that I run my business under, right? So they're
Okay.
the brokerage. There's lots of agents. We're actually the number one by agent count in the world. So we're actually all over the world, which is really neat. And then I have a team that I run under that umbrella called the Evolve Real Estate Team. And at that point, then I kind of pick and hire on that because it's a team that I run. So we pick, and I have some, great people that I work with. My colleague Sarah, so she's an amazing partner, another agent on our team too, and she's been helping actually quite a few newcomers too in the last year.
It's good. And so, as someone who's picking your team as well to work with you at Evolve, what is the most important thing that you want the people that you work with to have?
I think of the ability to listen and build relationships and understand what the buyer's needs are. For every person, that's different. And I can completely understand, coming from a new country, to be new to Canada has its challenges in its own, right? Like, so you really need somebody that understands what that looks like. Because, some countries, people would, be taking that light fixture when they leave or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's different things, and you have to understand that it's different and just take the time and explain it. We might do this every day, but for most people, some people only ever do it once.
Yeah, once
or
in
a
a
couple
lifetime.
times. Yes,
Or
exactly.
couple.
Yeah, or a couple, right? So just to slow down, be patient, and make sure you're giving the time that the client deserves so they can make a good decision.
That's
Best advice.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to connect with a realtor?
You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. It's Evolve Real Estate Team, or Helena McDermott. And and we can connect. Call, text, DM.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Helena.
Thanks for
I really
having me.
appreciate having you, and I'm sure that my friends and the newcomers as well would appreciate this.
Wonderful. Excited to hear from them.